Hello everyone, this is Gautam from Shailaja. The issue that we'll be discussing here is your Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, or in short term it is called as START. This treaty was in news because it expired on February 5th, 2026 and it was not renewed further. This treaty was actually signed in 2011 between USA and Russia. Right, Vladimir Putin from Russia and Barack Obama from USA signed this Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty in 2011. The validity was for 10 years, but in 2021, it was further extended for 5 years. So got its lifeline till 2026, but in February 2026, it was expired and was not renewed further. So that is why it was in news. In this video, we'll try and understand the context or the brief background about this treaty itself. So it goes back to your Cold War era, 1960 to Cuban Missile Crisis and further developments. We'll try and look in a very brief manner about what led to this particular treaty, or what are the objective of this particular treaty, right? And we'll try and understand why this treaty was not extended in 2026. What were the reasons that was given by USA and Russia to not extend this particular treaty? Now, since they are not extending this treaty, what are the implications for the world and what are the implications for India? We'll try and understand that. And finally, we'll try and understand what can be the way forward. Okay, so let us begin with a brief background of it. I think you all know the World War II gave rise to a new phenomenon called as your nuclear bombs. And after the end of the World War II, there were two winners who were in possession of your nuclear weapons. One bloc was your USA, the second bloc was your USSR, and both of them wanted to dominate the world, and both of them started building more and more nuclear weapons. So in the entire 1950s, it was more or less like a nuclear arms race. USA thought that Russia is having 10 bombs, so let me build 20 nuclear bombs. Russia thought again that since USA is now trying to build 20 bombs, I should build 40 bombs. So it was a spiral scenario or a nuclear arms race where both the countries were trying to develop their nuclear weapons. And it had reached to that an extent that both the countries knew that both of them had enough nuclear weapons which could destroy the earth several times over. So by 1960, early 1960s, both of them realized that we are now reached a dead end. Even if we have so many nuclear weapons, we'll not be able to use it because they were mutually assured of the destruction capabilities of both the sides. So if, for example, US fires a nuclear weapon, then Russia is going to retaliate in such a big manner that it can destroy the entire world. So can the US. So if Russia launches any nuclear weapons, the nuclear arsenal with the US, or the nuclear bombs with the US, was so much in number that it could not only destroy Russia, it could destroy the entire earth several times over. Both of them realized by 1960s that this was the situation. So, and both of them realized it is not a very secure situation where both of them, like each of them are thinking in a constant state of insecurity, that will they launch, will there be a nuclear war? So they were in a constant state of insecurity and they were incurring huge money with regard to maintaining or developing these nuclear weapons. And also in 1962 there was a Cuban Missile Crisis where your Soviet missiles were launched in Cuba and US was in a brink of collapse if at all Russia had launched it or USSR had launched it. And that Cuban Missile Crisis pushed both the leaders of both the countries, that is your Kennedy from USA and Khrushchev from USSR, to come together and engage in negotiations so as to, you can say, control the expansion or the growth of your nuclear weapons. Okay, and eventually it led to a treaty called as Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty in 1972. So that was one of the landmark agreement where both the countries said that we are no more going to further expand our nuclear weapons and we are no more going to further test our nuclear weapons. So that was, you can say, a landmark agreement in itself. But in 1979, USSR invaded Afghanistan, and all this nuclear talks or negotiations or treaties somehow took a backseat. And again, they started renegotiations in the early 1990s when USSR was completely disintegrated. So 1980s was a time period which was in a flux, where the world was not really knowing what to do with regard to the progress on non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. So in 1992, they said that we are not only going to limit it, we are going to reduce it. So that is something called as a START 1. Okay, START 1 was signed in your 1991. That is Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. So nuclear weapons, they are giving it a very bureaucratic name called as strategic arms, right? And they are saying that we are going to reduce, the treaty's objective is to reduce strategic arms. And it said that both the countries cannot exceed 6,000 nuclear warheads in your START 1 treaty. And it was valid for 10 years. And somehow it was considered as a successful thing. And 2002, they tried to sign a new treaty, which again further reduced the stockpile of both the countries. And in 2011, as I told you, new START treaty was signed between Barack Obama and Vladimir Putin, with imposed certain limits on the nuclear weapons of both the countries. So it primarily had three important features. We'll try and look one by one. So as I already told you, the objective of this treaty is what? To limit the nuclear weapons or the strategic weapons, and to verify the nuclear arsenals of both superpowers. So they are also not only trying to reduce the nuclear weapons, they are allowing each other country to come and verify whatever you are saying is correct or not. Now, what is the benefit of all these things? The benefit is that if there is transparency about what the enemy is having, especially in terms of nuclear weapons, you will not unnecessarily spiral and get into arms race and divert your resources into developing these nuclear weapons, which you know cannot be used. All these nuclear weapons, whatever these countries are having, cannot be used in practice. It is just to create that fear. And both of them know that neither of them can actually use it. It is only for the other countries that they are trying to build up this nuclear arsenal. Right? Now, we'll try and look what are the three key limits that was features of this START treaty. First and foremost, it said that both the countries should limit their nuclear warheads to 1550. So it was considered as the lowest in the last 7 decades. At one point of time, it was said that Russia was having nearly 15,000 to 20,000 nuclear warheads. And in 1972, they said that it should not grow it further. 1992, they said that it should limit it to 6,000. And finally, in 2011, they said that it cannot be more than 1550. Likewise, they also said that the delivery vehicles, because nuclear weapons cannot be delivered as it is, it needs some launch vehicles or delivery vehicles. They started imposing restrictions on these delivery vehicles as well. They said that maximum intercontinental ballistic missiles or submarine launched ballistic missiles, they can limit it to 700 in number. Right? So not only the nuclear warheads, which is the actual nuclear bombs, but also the delivery vehicles needs to be limited or controlled. And both the countries were given visitation rights of 18 per year. So Russia could inspect or go to US 18 times, go to the nuclear war, you can say sites that were declared by the US, and tell that is it really following the treaty or not. Okay, so it was more or less considered as a legally binding treaty, which neither of the country can escape it, right? Because if one country stops while one country violates it, then the other country can always tell to the world that it is this country which has violated the treaty. It is considered as a face loss in the international politics, right? So these were the key limits of the New START treaty that was signed in 2011. Now, why this was not continued or this was not renewed in 2026 when it was expired? 2021 it was actually expired, but they got an extension of another 5 years. But in 2026, both the leaders said that no, we are not going to renew. Primarily because Russia suspended the treaty unilaterally in 2023 itself. Because Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. and US was in the camp of Ukraine fighting Russia. Since Russia and Ukraine were in war, Russia was saying that US is trying to utilize this 18 visits in order to gather intelligence and provide that intelligence to Ukraine, which is fighting against Russia. So said that we will not allow this 18 visits, which is a part of your new START treaty, and we are going to suspend this treaty itself. So that was one of the major reasons. They said that USA is involved indirectly in a war with me through Ukraine, so I will not be a part of this treaty. That was the argument given by Russia. And as forth, it was not revived. So it was kept in cold storage, or it was not given focus by Russia itself. From a US perspective, US said that having just Russia as a part of the treaty is not enough, because I know my main competitor in the coming years or even in the current times is not Russia but China. China is aggressively expanding its nuclear arsenal. So for the nuclear stability of the world, along with Russia, China also needs to be a part of this treaty. That is what is the argument by the US. China said that I don't care, you guys have negotiated and signed the treaty, you be a part of it. Russia said, so even though I am a friend of China, I cannot force China to come and be a part of this treaty. And Russia itself has suspended itself from the treaty. Right. Also, another argument which was given by Russia in order to suspend from the treaty is that it asked for the expansion of the treaty in order to include more number of US missiles. It also wanted to include France and Italy's nuclear arsenal into this treaty framework. If USA is asking China's nuclear arsenals to be a part of the treaty, Russia is asking France and Italy's nuclear arsenal to be a part of this treaty, which was not agreed to by the US or the other countries. As a result, Russia said that I am not going to be a part of this treaty. Right. Another aspect is the new weapons which has been developed by both the countries. Especially Russia unveiled something called as Avangard hypersonic missile system, which are considered as deadly as any other advanced weapons. And by not including these advanced weapons into the part of the treaty itself was not updated with the modern times. So the analysts and activists had also called for inclusion of the modern day technologies as a part of this treaty, which neither of the countries were willing to do it. Right. Also, on a US side, there were certain sections in the US who started saying that it's because of these treaties which has been signed. US is not able to increase its military strength and develop more and more nuclear warheads. If we had more nuclear warheads, then Russia will definitely get scared and it will not try to fight against us. That is the argument by certain sections of US domestic politics. And since Donald Trump more or less comes from this conservative sections of US domestic politics, there was also this factor to not renew the New START treaty. So cumulatively, there are multiple factors which did not allow the renewal of the New START treaty, and as a result, it expired in February 2026. Now, what are the implications of this non-renewal? First and foremost, this is the first time in the last 50 years that we are not having any particular treaty which prevents the growth of the nuclear arsenal by the superpowers. Right? Earlier, from 1972 onwards, there was some other treaty which was in operation and which was trying to limit the growth and the expansion of your nuclear warheads or nuclear weapons. But this is the first time in the history for the last 50 years that we are not having any binding treaties which prevents both the superpowers from expanding their nuclear weapons. So we are more or less entering into the world of nuclear anarchy. In the sense, there is no set of rules, everyone is going to play according to their wish. Right? And more importantly, it is going to lead to a three-way nuclear arms race. China obviously feels that it is now an equally dominant player in the world because of its economic heft. And it is also trying to spend more amounts of money in order to modernize its military and increase its nuclear weapons. And this is being observed by USA. USA says that I need to develop now more weapons in order to counter China. And USA also further knows that Russia and China are more or less together. So cumulatively, their nuclear weapons number is more than what I'm having currently. So I need to increase my own nuclear weapons. Russia, on the other hand, feels that okay, so my own neighbor is trying to increase its own nuclear weapons, so I need to increase my own nuclear weapons. Okay, so it is more or less entering into a three-cornered nuclear arms race, which is unnecessarily going to divert the resources which could have been used otherwise for the welfare of the people. And this is going to plunge the world into a new era of nuclear instability, right? And there is going to be an erosion of your Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which was signed in the late 1970s. Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty somehow freezed the existing nuclear world order. It said that the 5 permanent members of United Nations Security Council can have nuclear weapons, but eventually they are going to dismantle it or disarm it. However, other countries are not allowed to access nuclear weapons. In exchange for signing this Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, they will be getting benefits of or sharing of nuclear technology which can be used for civilian purposes like medical research purposes or energy generation purposes. Right? Out of this, outliers are India. India has not signed Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and still continues to be a nuclear power and still continues to engage in a nuclear trade. Right? So that is a separate topic in itself. But what is going to happen because of expiry of this treaty, the very significance of non-proliferation treaty is going to get diluted, and smaller players are going to come under the pressure in order to acquire weapons because they feel that superpowers themselves are not behaving in a responsible manner. So why should we stop ourselves from developing our own weapons? Your best case examples are your Iran, Pakistan, or your North Korea. So they will be, you can say, they will be emboldened in order to fast track their nuclear weapons, right? And another important factor is the nuclear signaling in war. So these countries like Russia or even the US can time and again or often come out and say that I will not hesitate to use nuclear weapons. So there is a signaling that can happen, and this is going to unnecessarily create tensions and uncertainty and instability in the world itself. So nuclear signaling is going to increase more frequently in the coming years because of the expiry of this treaty. Okay, so these are some of the global implications. Now, when it comes to implications for India, obviously there is going to be a regional instability because Pakistan is now emboldened to enrich or increase its own nuclear warheads. China is anyway increasing its nuclear warheads. As a result, India will be forced to increase its nuclear weapons arsenal, and it is going to create a situation of uncertainty or insecurity in the region itself. And as a result, in the coming days, there is going to be pressure on India's strategic autonomy itself. Because eventually what will happen, it can move in a direction where India has to choose either a USA bloc or otherwise, right? So these are some of the implications of the non-renewal of this treaty itself. But obviously, we'll have to wait and see in another 6 months to 1 year. There are certainly going to be some other developments because there's going to be pressure from the international community to bring or to arrive at some sort of a framework that prevents the proliferation of your nuclear weapons and brings in some sort of a stability in the nuclear world order. Okay. So what needs to be done going forward? First and foremost, rather than only these two countries trying to sign this treaty, it has to be a multilateral framework where all the permanent members of United Nations Security Council who are having nuclear weapons needs to be a part of this, you can say, arms reduction treaty, right? And the treaty should also be updated with the modern times where it is inclusive of all the latest technological developments that has happened, be it your hypersonic missiles, be it your advanced drones, all of them also needs to be brought into the ambit of this treaty. See, if these things needs to be done, it is going to certainly take time, but nevertheless, the confidence building measures needs to be on. Diplomacy between USA and Russia needs to continue through back channel talks. There has to be some sort of an engagement so that the world does not again go back to a Cold War era where there is, you can say, nuclear arms race. And India is actually well positioned in order to play a bridge role because it is having good relationship with both of the blocs. So India can play a bridge role in order to bring these two countries or other permanent members to arrive at some sort of a nuclear non-proliferation framework. Because India is having good credibility so far, because it has not gone for spreading of your nuclear technology. It is having its own nuclear doctrine, which clearly says no first use policy. So that policy can be pushed into the multilateral framework that involves other permanent members also, right? So India is in a unique role in order to take up a leadership role, push for this nuclear disarmament or nuclear arms reduction treaties, right? So that is all on this particular topic. It may not be entirely asked in specifically on this particular topic, but if you're having a knowledge about it, you can utilize it in your examples or value additions or even in your essay answer writing, right? There's one question which I have included over here. Expiration of the New START Treaty in 2026 marks the structural disintegration of the post-Cold War arms control architecture. Now, give me the reasons behind the collapse of this bilateral framework and also the impact on the global strategic stability. So, what all we are discussed in now, what all points are given, try to frame it in an answer and you can send it to me, right? This is my email ID and this is my phone number. You can either WhatsApp me or Telegram me. Looking forward for your responses. Thank you.